I did my first drawing in 1977 of what was to become Strawberry Shortcake.
Muriel Fahrion, the artist behind Strawberry Shortcake, grew up in Cleveland and got a job at American Greetings here in Northeast Ohio. And if you're a fan of Strawberry Shortcake cartoons or toys, you're very familiar with her work.
Can I draw her with my eyes closed? I can.
You're listening to Cleveland Magazine's CLE Connection podcast, where we take a closer look at the stories and surprising connections to Northeast Ohio in pop culture. My name is Annie Nikoloff. Muriel Fahrion is an icon, and not just for her work on Strawberry Shortcake. She's also very well known for creating the earliest concept art for Care Bears. I had the opportunity to catch up with this legendary Cleveland artist and hear her story. Here's our conversation.
I was born in Women's Hospital in, I'm going to tell everybody, 1945. And I think our first home, and I was way too young to remember, but it was on East 105th Street, I think above a store or a bar or something then. And then the family moved to the west side after that. The first house we lived in was in Rocky River. It was a workman's cottage from the railroad. It was 900, it still is, 930 square feet. And there ended up being 7 children and 2 adults. So living small is something I'm used to. So yeah, I was raised in Cleveland, one of 7 children. I consider myself the middle child. I'm not really, but I was the third girl, followed by the first boy.
One of the middle children.
That's where I grew my imagination. I started drawing at least at the age of 4, if not earlier. For me, it was easier than walking, was just drawing and doing art. As my sister said, we were selective mute. I didn't talk very much at all, but I really loved creating and always wanted to be an artist since I can remember. And so I followed that, and any free class I could get in Cleveland, which you could get free classes. So all you'd have to do is bus fare really to get to those classes. And I took every one I could. Love the Cleveland Museum of Art. I would sit at the, age of 4 and 5, sit in front of the Impressionist in the little camp chairs. And I thought, since I was drawing what they did, the Haystacks by Monet, I think, I was then officially an artist. I believed it. I really believed it from the very beginning. It's such an advantage living in the Cleveland area for budding artists, for anything creative. I think it's a really great place to grow up and to develop a sense of humor also. So anyhow, so that's how it all began. My sister Susan went to art school before me, and so that kind of opened the gate, right? Like, okay, now it's your turn. You can go into this thing, and so I did. Went to Cooper School of Art, which was a commercial arts school back then. But I still had the same teachers as the Cleveland Institute of Art. There you go, at a cheaper price. Yes, I was a commuter student. And I worked for my tuition, and I also got half a tuition. I got half just because I would show up for all the Saturday classes when I was in high school. So I got half tuition off, which our family could really use that. We really believed in education, but you had to kind of do it yourself. And I did that and did well. I skipped some classes, got in trouble because I wanted to draw. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do studio classes like how to use magic markers. I didn't want to do that. How to do paste up. I didn't want to do that. And so when I finally went to graduate, the dean or the director said to me, "Come here." I said, "What is it?" She says, "Well, we can't graduate you. You didn't take any studio classes at all, and you got a low grade in anatomy, not the drawing, in naming the parts and what they did." I said, "American Greetings has hired me. How is that going to look for the school if somebody's hired me, right? And you don't graduate me?" And he goes, "Okay, well, graduation." And so myself, they would take the top students from both Cooper School of Art and the Institute of Art. You had like an open door to come in and be there. A lot of people back then poo-pooed greeting cards, not real art, not the stuff. And until I talked to a friend, my husband was working, I got married, so my husband was working in the studio, and she's like, "Oh no, that you don't want to be in there. You want to be you want to be out in the studios. It's more as an illustrator, blah blah blah." And I said, then she told me how much she made, and I made more. And the way I looked at it is like, they're paying me to draw. Yes, let me draw. The only thing that was open to me, because they had hired too many people and they tried to get you to quit. They did all kinds of things. You were in training and they tried to get you to quit. I'm not quitting. I haven't done anything wrong. If they wanted to, they had to fire me, but they had to have a good reason. There was no reason to fire me, except there was. And that was I could not paint roses. I had to do layers, you have to separate them in color separation. It's not me. And so they were going to fail me. They were going to like kick me out because they couldn't do roses. But luckily for me, the person that was head of art training, really greeting card training, got another job. And so I was still there.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, right. I was still there. And I had a wonderful person, a mentor, really, Maxine Masterfield Smith. Fabulous, fabulous artist. I don't know if she's still around. She may not be still around, but turned into, after she left American Greetings, she became a fine artist. So anyway, she took my portfolio. She went to every single department and said, "You got to hire this person." And so humorous and juvenile planning hired me. Perfect. It was a perfect fit. It was. So that's where I bloomed. My supervisor, Wendell Sartain, was an amazing teacher. He guided me. He said, first of all, if you think you're doing fine art, you're not. You're not doing fine art. You're doing commercial art. And what you do, if you do a greeting card, American Greetings, that has to appeal to at least 80,000 people. We have to sell those cards. No pressure.
No pressure at all.
No, but I loved Wendell. He's gone. Most of the people I worked with are gone. Anyhow, I was in humorous and drawing, blue elephants and pink elephants and hillbilly cards, and which could be banned now, but I had all the hillbilly cards. That was all the pop-ups, because I could do those things. So I always like to do more. So they made me head of greeting card training within the department. So the artists that would come in, I'd be training them. No extra money, but I enjoyed it. And I still enjoy moving art forward, influencing, helping people grow in their art, etc. I still like to do that. But then I had to also give reviews, management reviews. Let's get into how it all started. There's a thing called, it was like free time, and we were there to do promotions. It's called promotional. And you would just come up with new characters. And you didn't have any verses. Usually you have a verse. Sometimes the verse was 16 years old, and you had to do yet another version of it that nobody has ever done. It was actually an interesting task, but this was a time where you can do your own character. And my director at that time said, "I want you to do Ragdoll." Well, Raggedy Ann and Andy animation had just come out, and we all went to see it. And so I was influenced, and he says, "I want a ragdoll character, but I want it to be pink and red with daisies and hearts and, strawberries." And so he gave me this whole verbal explanation of what he would like to see. And he tried other people on it, but I don't know all the people he tried on it. And I did it. And I did my first drawing in 1977 of what was to become Strawberry Shortcake. That was the first one I did. It got like thumbs up. It turned out to be, everybody got to do different ones, right? But it was considered to be one that we're going to try. And we were going to try it for Valentine's Day. So then I had to go and do 14 more designs with Strawberry Shortcake. And since it was Valentine's Day, introduced Huckleberry Pie. She had to have a boyfriend, right, to share that soda with. And apple dumpling, that was my idea because I looked at apple dumpling as her little sister, and she had a best friend. Of course, he had to bring a best friend, and that was blueberry muffin. So, I did all that. And then like some crazy thing happened. Bernie Loomis, who was the head of General Mills in the creative division, he is the one that made Star Wars the big deal in licensing. Under him was Kenner, the big toy company, and Fisher Price eventually, I think. But they all this umbrella, and they were all under that. So he came to American Greetings and talked to Tom Wilson, known for Ziggy. So we in Ohio know who Tom Wilson is. Brilliant, brilliant, creative man. Very creative. Came to him and said, what do you have that for girls, which will be just as big as Star Wars was for boys? And he had a briefcase. The first thing he took out was Ziggy. And they go, no way. Not for girls. No, you don't have it. And then he took out the other ones that had scored high in the adventure, in the what's going to go in the line. And it scored high. Shortcake was really a number 5 that he pulled out of the briefcase. Bernie Loomis says, that's it. It's going to be toys. It's going to be clothes. It's decor. It's going to be animation. And it's going to be an amusement park. It never became an amusement park.
Well, everything else.
It could have, right? We have all those characters, but no, it didn't become that. But everything else, everything. But of course, they all had to be approved. And the licensees had to have faith in this. There was really no record of amazing sales or anything with this. So they had to have faith and put their money first, betting on it, that it's going to be the big deal. That's how it worked. But we had to establish writing. We had to establish characters. I had to establish, all this other stuff, storyboards. And I worked with a gifted writer, Lynn Anderson, who is now gone. But Lynn was head of eventually became overall the writers at those characters from Cleveland. But anyway, I worked with her directly, but we had to do it kind of in a hush hush. We were ahead 2 years in what we were planning for American Greetings. It's a big boat, right? It's a ship. It had to be like 10,000 people, 350 creatives. There's just no way you can turn that ship that quick. And we had to like hide it from management and from marketing. We're not going to let them know, not quite yet. And we had a budget. The budget was $1,000. And we had to pull this all off, right? And meanwhile, we had to keep up with our production on the line. But it's like, for me, I love a challenge. I do. It's so fun being in the front of the engine. And so we did it. But at one point, they were already moving over to a different building, a small factory building that wasn't on campus, except I wasn't there, but they were all moving. And Ralph Schaefer was the one that was going to head up our group. And I said, Ralph, take me. I said, can we have a meeting? He said, no, we can't. There's no time. I said, well, then this is what I want to tell you. Take me, because we're trying. We're trying to take you. And they were fighting to keep me, because now they knew what it was going to be. And they were fighting to keep me. Whatever reason they were fighting to keep me, I don't know. I really don't know. But they were fighting to keep me. Now, the last thing they needed for this whole show thing that we're going to show all the licensees was a doll. We are 2D artists. We are not doll makers. So they said, anybody know anyone that could make a doll? I said, my sister can. Now, she's the one that preceded me at art school. She did all her kids' clothes. She made everything. She was amazing. She was ambidextrous. She could sew with both hands. Amazing. I said, my sister can. I didn't even ask her. My sister can. She only has 6 kids. She'll be fine. So my sister Susan Trentel, made the first doll under my direction. She's 2 years older, so I got to be her boss for a little bit of time. So that was a go, and they finally released me from the big corp. I took my chance going with this new division. And it was called, and this was another brainstorm of Tom Wilson, it was called TCFC, Those Characters from Cleveland, because it was going to be the licensing division and think tank. So in came Holly Hobby, of course. Holly Hobby preceded Strawberry Shortcake. I actually met Holly Hobby, etc., and gave her freelance work. I admired her work for sure. Herself, the Elf, Ziggy, of course, Sherman on the Mount, and each one had its own director, and I had an art director over me, Tom Schneider, uh, all gone. I liked it. I liked it because it was like the Little Rascals. I mean, we're just like doing the show. We're putting all this stuff together. It was a group of, I think, like 40 eventually. There was, I think, 40 of us. And nobody had their own phone back in those days. You had one phone for all the artists. So
Wow.
anything you had to say on the phone, all the rest of them heard because it was just a phone, right? It was very interesting division. I did everything. I did the packaging. I did my own photocopying. I was it for several years. I think it did a lot to help a lot of companies. But of course, the number one easy one, good one to work with Kenner Toys. Amazing, amazing talent there. And we sat together. I think we had a couple meetings, not many, and we sat there and talked about her proportion, how they'd have to make it, etc. And then they would show me versions, and I'd okay or say, tell them where to tweak things to make it work better. At that time, the stinky stickers had just come out, right? And the idea is like, if they could put the smell in those, they could put a smell in a doll. Now, who decided that? I'm sure it was at a brainstorm. When we had blue sky brainstorms, you don't record like so and so said this, so and so. No, you just listen to the ideas as they pop down. I'm going to say it was Tom Wilson, maybe Ralph Schaefer, because, there was those guys that were started, they're artists. I think it was one of those two, but it definitely was the hook. It's what people seem to remember the best.
Thank you for sharing your journey and the story behind Strawberry Shortcake. Such an iconic piece of art, merchandise, history here in Cleveland. And, I know while you were at American Greetings too, you played a role in Care Bears. I was wondering if you could speak to that as well and your capacity with that project.
Yeah, so, 2 years later, and I am still deep into the characters on Shortcake, 39 characters in the Strawberry Shortcake line. So I was deep into Strawberry Shortcake, but they had this thing called retreats, creative retreats. You would write down what your idea was a retreat so that you wouldn't be in meetings, etc. You wouldn't be, scheduling your work. You could break and do some free thinking. And I wrote mine to like go to the teddy bear convention it was near Columbus, and we were going to stay. I had to plan the whole thing. We're going to stay at a bed and breakfast, and we're going to go to the teddy bear convention. You get to pick your people. So you're like, I'm going to bring these two artists, and I'm going to bring this writer, and I'll bring this marketing person. And then you go down there and you do it. And we did that. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was huge. And you forget how important bears were. Even then, they were starting to come out again. But they had been on the market really since Teddy Roosevelt. That's why they're called teddy bears, because of Teddy Roosevelt. So that was early 1900s, 1915 or something like that. It was very early. We came back and Ralph said, so what's the big idea? And we said, bears. And he goes, no, duh. Where did I send you? Yes, but this is the challenge. We have to make our bears different than any bear that has been made since 1915. So he tried at least three of us on creating an original bear. They did not want me to win because I'm still doing shortcake. Like they didn't want to take me off of that, but they said, okay, she wins because I'm the queen of cute. I can make anything cute. I can do that. And the other ones can make a lovely drawing, et cetera, and they have whimsy and stuff, but was the queen of cute. So I became the engine on the Care Bears. And I worked on that probably a year, maybe a year and a half. I did the packaging, I did the cloud car, I did a whole bunch, and I did maybe the first bunch. The whole idea that made it new and not like anything else was that they're going to have a sentiment on their chest, the top selling sentiments and greeting cards, by the way. They had just come out with substatic printing, And we knew about it. And so they were going to do that. But obviously, substatic printing wasn't quite ready for us. So then it became embroidered, which I think was really a lovely idea. And I think it's great. And so that's the way that all happened. A year and a half. And then it was really kind of handed over to a very talented Elaine Kucherik, who then became the person that you see paint and color and all that kind of stuff. It's Elaine's work, and she's marvelous. I can say I was the engine that could. I was the first one to do it.
That's wonderful. And just those two, I feel those are the two I think of when I think of American greetings, the Strawberry Shortcake and Care Bears.
I think you should forget calling people what by their astrological sign. You should ask them instead, what is your favorite Care Bear? Because it tells you something about the person. So, it's like I like good luck. That's like my second category.
Yeah.
But the biggest seller, would you like to guess what the biggest bear was? The biggest
Oh, I don't know.
Grumpy Bear was the number one selling.
I mean, relatable. A relatable
Yeah.
guy.
So it went across boys and girls. And the boys, Grumpy Bear.
Your post on social media about drawing and how art has really been an outlet for you. I was wondering if you could speak to that and just your current practice today, what that looks like and what that means to you.
So my art is my solace. It takes me away from things that are hard. When my husband had had 4-stage cancer, and I'd go with him. I would sit there when he was going through the treatment, and I would draw. I would draw, and I would do the drawings, and then I would hand it out to the nurses. And I realized that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm happy, if I'm sad, if a storm is going through my town. Drawing matters. And when I do a drawing, I'm part of that drawing. Somebody said, are you worried about AI? I'm not. AI can't do what I can do. First of all, I'm sketchy. They can't reproduce that and have the feeling I put in my characters. Like I said, they said, which character you mostly like? I go, all of them, because we wrote descriptions for the characters, personalities for the characters. And I say we because Lynn and I would put our heads together and come up with it. Can I say what was Lynn's thing? What was I can't. We were working as a unit. And other writers too. I love writers. Writers are some of my favorite people, maybe even before artists sometimes. I like writers a lot. I have a thing called creative retreats that I have here. I have young people come in where I encourage them. I said, you don't have to be a fine artist. You don't have to be that. You just have to love it every single day, every single day. And that's where you find your happiness. That's where you find yourself in a drawing. And you have to be original. Be original because it's a tough road to go if you can't tell your work from somebody else. You have to have something that is special about your stuff.
Well, and what you just said about originality, and I just think of your characters and the work that you did, here in Cleveland with Strawberry Shortcake with Care Bears and how enduring they are even today. And I know they're, with the company element, they have TV shows and branding deals and all that, but there is something about them that I feel just stays relevant and enduring to so many generations and to kids. I'm just wondering from your perspective, what do you think makes them so timeless?
I think there's no gimmicks necessarily. There's no gimmicks. It's if I can get lost in doing my drawing, the children can get lost in playing with them. And they tell me, because now I do all these conventions and meets and greets. I did 14 in the year 2024, 14, and I'm very old, okay? And I did these, and the lines went on forever. And you would have generations. You have grandma, mom, and the baby in the arms, all dressed as the characters. They're all dressed. You have people flying in from all over the United States to come and see me. My lines don't end. They have to send people away because they want to meet me. People say, well, it's Gen X. And I go, oh, no, it's so much more. Gen Z became my biggest followers on Instagram. At last date, it kind of sticks there, 120,000 followers on Instagram. am I astonished a little bit every day, but it's okay, you know? It's like when someone's in front of me, somebody that loves the characters, somebody that grew up with somewhere, some people that said the characters saved my life. So I call them, there's the collectors that I call the spoiled ones that got everything, the bed with the canopy, the wallpaper, the sleeping bag, and then you got somebody that got one doll from her aunt. Her and her mother lived in a car. I call that the fractured childhoods, but they grew up to be adults. They grew up to be there to meet me, you know? Makes me want to cry, and it's just me, you know? It's just like, oh my gosh, I got to go to Mexico and do a Comic-Con in Mexico. Do I speak Spanish? Not at all. I can ask for water. That's about it. It didn't matter to them. It didn't matter to the people in Russellville, Arkansas. It doesn't, you know, and I did one in Cleveland. It was small. You would think it'd been bigger. I thought it should be bigger. But it's okay. It's okay because I'm going to be living in Cleveland. It's going to be a little difficult. Did I want to leave Tulsa in the area? I did not. However, my daughter is a school teacher and she moved back to Cleveland because she loved Cleveland, but also because of the teaching position that was open was going to be so much better for her and she could own a house. And it was like a whole thing. And I thought, you know what? Life is short. And I need to be with my daughter. My daughter needs to be with me. So that's how I worked it out.
Mhm.
So all you Ohioans, I will be back there in June, starting in June. I hope to meet a lot of people.
It seems like there's always a Cleveland connection to big stories, if you know where to look, and you just learned about a big one. Thank you to Muriel for sharing her stories with me. You can keep up with her work at her Instagram page at Outta Thin Air Studio and her website, outtathinairstudio.com. There you can even buy original artwork, prints, books, buttons, and more, much of which features Strawberry Shortcake. Thank you to Nylor for the song Phantasms, which you're hearing behind me right now, and also heard at the beginning of this podcast. Be sure to follow Cleveland Magazine online at clevelandmagazine.com, on social media, and in print for more stories like this one. I'm Annie Nikoloff. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cleveland Connection.